So there's a misconception that if you're single, you are incomplete, perhaps damaged, salvaged, and you won't be happy until you find your one. And that is not true. That is bullshit. It is a message that has been fed to us by media and advertising. The truth is, when you're single, you have the richest soil for growth. That's why I created this podcast. And unlike other podcasts, this one is host-driven, not guest-driven. That means I will be rotating health and wellness experts 3 times a week to give you the giant box of wellness crayons, not just the primary colors, so you can start building a meaningful life. It's time to give singlehood a cape. So today's host, Lindsay Burke, she and I go way back when I was working in addiction, residential, Malibu, driving my little motorcycle on PCH to help people with addiction, and she was on my team. I'm so happy that she is a part of this rotating hosts and experts for this podcast. Lindsay Burke is the founder of Lift Therapy, and she's a licensed therapist, behavior interventionist, coach, martial artist, yes, martial artist, a wife, a parent, and expert consultant on attachment, narcissism, and toxic relationships, as well as early childhood development. Yes, she does everything. And she believes that human connection is the best medicine and is committed to helping people heal by helping them develop healthy attachments with others. Her mission is to enhance the field of mental health by making support and resources more accessible to you in the form of psychoeducation, supportive programming, and individual therapy. Lindsay has served as a host for the Disney Plus show Reconnect and as an advisor and expert writer for various newspapers, podcasts, and radio shows such as the Chicago Tribune, Relation Up, P Therapy, Life and Style Magazine, Pop Sugar, and on and on and on. She is very talented. She's a powerful catalyst, and I hope you enjoy. Well, I know you're going to enjoy and get so much out of her episode today.
Hi, all. Lindsay Burke here, and I have the absolute pleasure of introducing you to the founder of Be Here and Now Relationship Academy and the Secure Love Creator Framework, Dalila Jusic-LaBerge. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist located in Southern California who focuses on relationship coaching for high-achieving women, particularly, and I love this, over-functioning love seekers who struggle because they often wind up in dynamics with partners that want to see where it's going instead of working towards a committed relationship. And so she is a self-proclaimed political junkie who cannot survive without hiking as well. And I am just so excited to have you on our show today, Dalila. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm excited as well. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. And first of all, I just want to dive in today because I love that you use this language of over-functioning love seekers. I don't know how many of our listeners relate to that. I definitely relate to that. Can we just go ahead and start with you explaining what you mean by this?
Well, over-functioning is like pretty much figuring out how to be, talk, and show up in order to maintain the relationship. In this case, it's pretty much like kind of anxiety, what anxiety causes us to do. So when things don't work out in relationship, we start analyzing and thinking. We go into our head and try to figure out, it's that survival mechanism. So but what happens is that because of trauma beliefs, we internalize that our needs for closeness and love is too much, or that we are not worthy of love. And so because of this, we are ashamed to kind of be in touch with those needs and say, hey, this is what I need, this is what I want. So we wind up over functioning to see what's going on with the other person. Are they still liking us? And so like that.
So a lot of it has to do with, it's somewhat self-explanatory, but it has a lot to do with the internal experience of feeling like you need to merge that distance, fill the gap, that there's an unworthiness that needs to be made up for, essentially, that, might be conscious, might be unconscious, but they need to work a little harder in order to at least be perceived as worthy enough for a relationship.
And that's very true. Very often it's unconscious. It's not unconscious. We see that we are doing it, but none of us thinks, oh, I'm unworthy of love. We all know, like in our head, that we are all worthy of love, just like next person, right? that you meet. Because I know you're a wonderful person and you are worthy of love. But somehow when it comes to me, I have these urges. It's almost like automations of our nervous system that we learn very early on. And that's how we show up in relationships. So some of these signs are that we self-sabotage in relationships in various ways. So we are ashamed of our needs or for connection. So we kind of, oh yeah, of course I want love, but we can't express it. It's like we just stop when we need to communicate that. So we also may struggle because we don't know what makes us happy exactly, because all our life we actually have been over functioning to make ourselves more worthy of whatever it is: parental love, school, acknowledging us as good student, work, people telling us that we deserve praise. And
how would someone discern between going the extra mile and being high achieving and being ambitious, that desire to do great and be great and feel confident and get excited about doing something that is high achieving, versus essentially what you're talking about it sounds like is kind of a form of codependency, these over functioning behaviors, this unconsciousness that, oftentimes when I work with people who are kind of self-proclaimed perfectionists, or there's an element of pride that also gets attached to these behaviors, so they can become very defensive of this over functioning because it has worked. It has served them in some kind of regard. So tell me a little bit why this is a problem, these behaviors of over functioning when it comes to intimate relationships. How can they discern between going out of their way because of love is worth it and because the person is worth it and showing how much they care and being empathetic, versus crossing over into that place where it's really coming from unworthiness? How can they discern?
And that's a great point. You kind of need to go to that place. Where does that come from? Yes, my program and the way I think of love, that's the ultimate goal, for you to love. It's like everything else becomes secondary. So our ultimate joy in life is to love, but we can't love from that insecure place. So we need to have that other person. Relationship takes two. And if you are over functioning from that anxious place, you're gonna come from your analyzing head, and that serves you when you are analyzing numbers. For like, if you are like analyzing your marketing numbers, whatever your job is, if you work in in nuclear reactor and you need to be on top of things. Right?
I want my NASA guys to be particular about their
But
before we send a bunch of people to space, make sure that engineering is pretty clean.
But the growth here isn't for these women or men or anybody who is over functioning to be so focused on how they need to be better, but it's rather to figuring out what it is that works for me. So instead of looking, are they gonna like me? It's like, oh, who am I gonna like? What do I need to like somebody?
Obviously, the cognitive brain can check off these boxes of what a good partner looks like or what their ideal partner looks like. But we have to integrate it through how we feel when we're with them, how we feel in the relationship. That is so big. And I love that you use that phrase, that the ultimate joy is being able to love and to deeply connect. And you can't do that if you're just checking off the boxes, if you're not fully present, if you're not fully engaged with who you are in the relationship, if you're so worried about being the prototype with being the puzzle piece that they need, you can't fully embody receiving or giving love.
Exactly. That's a great point, because if you go to neuroscience about it, when you're analyzing, it's you are in that almost trauma space. And when I say trauma, I use it, broadly. I don't mean like this real big T trauma.
Sure.
Right. So but there are some elements in which we dissociate and have fight, flight, freeze, and fawn responses in relationships. So if you are in this anxious state of overfunctioning, you cannot connect even socially. Your brain is just shuts down that social component, and you go into this fight and flight mode. So you really don't connect socially, what to speak about emotional bonding. So in order to do that, you have to first know how to regulate your emotions, to be in that, we call it in trauma therapy, window of tolerance, like present here and now, and be able to be with this person. Just like for me now,
Love that.
I need to present this so well, but then
you're stripping away the agenda, really. There's no agenda.
Yes, but then our conversation, when it flows naturally, kind of goes even better than whatever script I may have prepared there.
Yes, because it's interactive at that point. It's I love
between two people, and
yes, it can be organic, and in that sense, it's actually creating something new in both of you. It's actually, you're creating something new together, which is a new dynamic. That is so beautiful. And stripping away that agenda, stripping away some of that, which, as you mentioned, and I love that you said that, there's often not a lot of insight. So this actually leads me right into my next question for you. In my experience, there are kind of two major necessary aspects of our growth that are necessary in order to continue in the direction of alignment that serves our relationships. And the first one is the shifts that we make alone. There's a lot of work that can be done, how we invest in ourselves, mindset shifts in our growth, how we spend our time, who we spend our time with, where we put our focus and attention. And then the shifts that are obviously needing to be integrated into the dynamics that you have, existing relationships, and like we're talking about, these new relationships. So when we're talking about someone who's in that in-between stage, that they are either newly single or they don't have any prospects right now, but they do want a relationship, and that is an ultimate goal. They want love, they want to connect, but they just don't have someone to practice with right now. They're not in that stage yet. What can they be doing at that time and at that stage that they don't need to have a partner for, to prepare for a healthy relationship, to prepare themselves to be able to begin to move out of that lack of insight into insight and self-awareness and openness, and releasing some of the big T and little t trauma, as you put it?
Yeah. So, I mean, some of these will be overlapping, because as you also mentioned in this questionnaire, we are never done our work, but I kind of categorize them, what you can do while you're in between relationships. So these will be the questions. So why did I choose this person? When you're analyzing your past relationships, so you need to see all the positives and negatives. What did I like about this person? And then what are some of the things that I don't want to repeat in the future relationships? So at least when you go through this, you will know what to look for and how it looks in the future when you go through this process. And one of the important ones, because we never address that, what are secondary gains that I had in these relationships, that in this thing that didn't work out for me. Like,
for instance, can you explain that a little further? What do you mean by secondary gains? That's a good one.
Secondary gain is like when people, we are unaware, like say in codependent relationships, we are with an avoidant partner, and we were attracted. There are so many reasons why we were attracted to that. I don't want to kind of go, my brain can go tangential at times, but
That's funny.
secondary gain is, let's say in this case, a part of me may be avoidant, even though it was bothering me that this person is avoidant and I needed this person to love me fully. But part of me really isn't ready to receive the love. So I stayed because I stayed for that secondary kind of gain. Like I didn't need to be so vulnerable. I didn't need to grow. I could be kind of comfortable in that discomfort. Another example is yeah.
I think that's so great. There's an element of, if I were with, it pokes at that worthiness part. If I'm hearing you correctly, it pokes at that. If I were to be with someone who was secure and not avoidant, for example, the version of me that I am right now might not be accepted by a secure person, as or there's an anxiety around that. So versus avoidant, I know how to participate in that dynamic. I know how to play that game. Daddy was avoidant, or mom was avoidant. My 4 exes were avoidant. I know how to compensate for that. But if they were secure, then, I would have to show up differently, and that's uncomfortable.
Yeah. That's just one example. I mean, we do so many things with secondary gain without even realizing and continue in life. Why did I stay in such and such relationship? We may even be aware of some of the reasons, but that's not what we are talking about here. So that's the first thing. So make peace with past relationships. This is the first thing that we do. One of these things while we are single. The second thing that I recommend is shift your positioning when you are out there in a relationship, and that kind of practice this. Remember that you are, I use the term generous queen of hearts. So you have the most valuable gift that you want to give to somebody, and then you need to discern carefully who is the recipient. Your gifts are 2 gifts, actually: your time and your heart. There is nothing that you can offer to somebody that's more valuable in this world, in my opinion, the way I see the world and life.
So, that's really good. So there's an element of what you're saying is really taking time to analyze and assess what you have to offer the relationship, and this really tuning into the value of your love and letting that be already so much separate from your money or your cooking or your your child rearing, or all these other skills you might bring to the table, or all these other assets that you bring to the table, to really know that your love, to hold that as the most valuable thing that you're offering.
Yes.
That is so big.
That is big. And we are just we just don't connect with it, because we go into this with a notion that, I need to make myself, how do I make myself likable to them? But you're already you, and you need somebody to love you for you, not for some imaginary version of yourself. You are not going to be happy.
Yeah.
So when things don't work out, then later with some people, they will not. And it's good that they're not. It's, think of it's a crude example. Take a person who sells Toyota cars or any other car, versus person who sells Ferraris. The Ferrari salesman doesn't think, oh my God, 17 people bought Toyota, but not a Ferrari. They know that this is something different, right?
Oh, that's a great example. That's such a great, it's already knowing the inherent value of what you have. I've got something good here. Yes. Well, and I love, I mean, you phrase that so beautifully, bringing that attention and that focus back on. I mean, it reminds me of Mr. Rogers, his song that's, it's you I like, not the things you wear, not the way you do your hair, but it's just that it's you. There's no one else like you is the whole point of the song. And it's just, we forget that when we're dating, that it's you. It's not, what you bring. There's something about you that's an element they'll never get anywhere else. And there's inherent deep value in that. And sometimes we think it's so hippy dippy. It's so hard to kind of organically encapsulate when we're talking about love and relationships. But we all know what that feels like, because you think about, and I'm sure you and I could get into parent attachments till the cows come home. But we think about how much we wanted our parents to just love us unconditionally, how much our parents can be so deeply ridiculous and embarrassing and flawed, and, and at the same time, how deeply we crave, to just be seen, and how deeply we, if we've ever felt that feeling towards someone else, loving someone despite all of everything else, despite all of their flaws, how much we just, it's who they are that can't be replaced, that I think most of us can relate to a certain degree. And I'm so glad you bring that attention and that reminder, to the table. It's not just the techniques of dating and how to communicate and how to send a text and how to, it's, you've got to start with embodying that inner self-worth.
And I mean, from there, all the texts and everything else comes easier. You don't need fake. But what you said is very important right now. We all seek that missing experience from childhood. We hope to find a partner that will replace and compensate for what our parents missed. And then we are afraid to show up. We don't know what it looks like. We don't know how it feels to be loved like that.
Yes.
We are unaware. But so that's the work we need to do, to figure out that missing experience and what we are looking for. And then teach our partner what that is. It's not like taking standing in front of a blackboard and teaching him, but
sure. Well, and again, it requires you being in tune with your body and your self-worth, and being really embodied in this feels good and this doesn't feel good, and to be able to discern that. So you have to know it first in order to communicate that with your partner. You have to be able to.
Right. Sorry.
Yeah.
So there's a couple more that you can do before starting. So the third one is know what you want, how to recognize it, how it feels to be in a good relationship. A reference points can be a pet, even a grandparent. It's that safety, security, and being completely loved the way you are, that experience. And of course, add to that romantic feelings. So it's very more complex. Romantic relationships are the most complex. But in that regard, so
to focus on those reference points, that's a really good way of phrasing that. To where those, maybe not people, because there might have been good points and bad points, but they're, but moments when you felt so unconditionally regarded and loved and secure.
And it's almost
what was happening.
It's funny because secure people sometimes are so like, they come to me like they have no idea what I'm talking about, because they're secure. Like when my grandma loved me, right, securely, it wasn't like, oh my God, it felt like rainbows and, unicorns and this, it was just like nothing. It's like, because it's
peaceful.
It was peaceful. And absence of anxiety and trembling and like wondering and like those kind of moments.
There's no conflict. Right? There's no conflict. It just feels normal. Yeah.
So that's kind of like what we need to remember and feel that and relish that memory. And if you have still those relationships, and even with your with people that you have. By the way, yeah, that's another point, that you don't necessarily have a certain type of attachment. You may have different attachment style with different people. So even with people that you had maybe insecure attachment, there are moments when there was these, secure moments, even with your parents, that might be, difficult. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely.
We have that you're good enough, and nobody said, oh, I'm good enough, with my grandma. But it's just kind of what you don't say. Like, I'm not anxious. I'm not enough, so.
Yes, that you're at peace. And that's beautifully said, because it is hard to identify. But I think most have felt a little bit of that, and we can think of people who've created those moments for us. So that's so big, and that's really good work to do, because that is what you're looking for. And you say, so once someone decides to get out there, they're ready to date. They're looking, they're answering the calls and the texts, and they're starting to set up dinners. You say that part of your mission is to help women better identify a secure love creator. Again, I love your terminology there, that someone who's able and capable, doesn't mean they do it perfectly all the time, but they're capable of creating and maintaining a secure dynamic, at least a good bit of the time, most of the time. For many of those who come from homes, that are more anxious, avoidant, ambivalent, dismissive, disorganized attachment styles from caregivers. And for listeners who don't know those concepts, essentially more immature and emotionally unstable parents who have a lot of their own unresolved trauma. So they just cannot model or manage big feelings for their children when they're young. And so if you experience some of that, it's hard to even know what's secure looks like or what it feels like if you haven't had a lot of those models. Could you break this down a little bit more for us, how someone would know they're with someone who's more secure? What would the dynamic feel more like? What would their behavior look more like?
Well, I kind of, as much as I study attachment and like that framework, I don't want our audience to go into all categorizations and say, oh, he is avoidant with a dose of such and such,
to try to do their own diagnosing.
Right?
Sure.
Go into that headspace. Like, it's always like, as we talked about, go back to yourself and how you felt with your grandma, in my case, and, your pet and your father, mother, whoever was that good caretaker, or at times at least they were good caretaker. So it's basically, it's all going back to yourself. So instead of being in that headspace and categorizing, I recommend doing that. So you want, just like we want good enough parent, right? We can be with a relationship ready person, whatever their attachment style background was. And again, remember, they may have avoidant attachment with their mother, but they are good with their father or grandma or something. So we can, with our kind of groundedness, we can easily, not easily, but easier attract people who kind of are attracted to that safety and security that we have with ourselves, and then that we can project out and invite that and choose. We can also be active, not just this helpless, person who
from moment to moment.
Exactly.
That's so Dalila, that's so empowering, because it just makes me think of in the moment, as opposed to saying, you're being avoidant, or you're being this, or, oh, good, you're secure now. But in the moment, in the interaction, being as present as that, as you say. And, when you do that, it just makes me feel so safe, being able to identify it then, and to be able to communicate that.
By communicating your goals, needs, and boundaries, you will naturally repel those that are not right for you and attract those that are right for you. It becomes so much easier. It's kind of like,
oh my gosh,
But
Amen.
the
Preach, they're not going to stay if you're like, hey, this makes me uncomfortable, or hey, I don't like how you're treating me in this circumstance, or, this is overwhelming, or I feel this way. Someone who has poor boundaries or who can't align with that, who isn't secure, is naturally not going to be able to stick. They're not going to be able to stay in that grounded space you're creating.
And then, as you continue the association dating with this person, I don't want to call it a relationship yet, but then you can observe how they react to you. And then you're going to see, are they more on the safe side? And most importantly, are they the right person for you? So do they respect your boundaries when you set them? When you say, hey, I want to take this slow, are they going to be somebody who will lash out at you and say, oh, you're not worthy, you're not even cute? There are people who are literally going to lash out at you like that. And you can say, okay, goodbye. It was nice meeting you.
Thank you for clarifying that for me. I love that.
Do they care about your needs? When you say, I thought you liked me, but you never call me. What's up with that? It's like, and they're going to be, they may be somebody who is also overfunctioning. Like, I don't want to call you too often. I don't want to sound as needy, right? They can be like, let me make sure I don't mess this up. So when you communicate that, you allow this person to feel also comfortable because you're open. They know what to expect from you. If you want secure, lasting, connection, and then you will see, okay, she likes, that I call her more often. So that's going to be a very good indication for you that this is something good to pursue, perhaps. And do they want same as you? Simple, like if I'm talking about relationships. Do they also want the same commitment, or do they just want to take it to see where it goes? For most of my clients, this is kind of the biggest pain, to see meeting people. Oh, let's see where it takes us. And then they're just very shy to say, and then they kind of smile, but they are swallowing, anxiety here, like, oh yeah, let's do that, but like, they go home with a, heart that's, what's the word? Like, so like tight and sad. And then observe. So that's one. So communication is the first thing that will help you discern. And then observe how the relationship is progressing. So is it emotional roller coaster of ups and downs? Like, when you see me and you call me and we have the greatest times, or is it, a consistency? So it needs to be consistency if you want to secure. And then if there is a little bit of push and pull, right, you can always communicate. Go back to that wonderful tool, communication, and setting your boundaries and saying, hey, this isn't what I'm looking for. Like I told my current husband, it's so funny. It's my second husband. So it's my husband.
Got double the practice.
Right. I told him, hey, when I saw the signs of that, kind of like, and it doesn't need to be your partner, it could be you. There is anxiety when relationship is settling, when things are becoming more comfortable. So there is no that excitement of the first, moment when they pursue you more. So I said, I'm noticing that as I'm growing more attached to you, that you are not that you're kind of withdrawing a little bit, and it makes me wonder, are you one of those people who become kind of disinterested in people who are interested in them? And if that's you, I said, I don't want to do this kind of dance. I've done that in the past. So, and he got that message. It was, it wasn't a problem for me anymore. So you have to be brave to speak up for yourself. And
that's a great example. And to listen, to say, okay, this thing that's happening is making me uncomfortable, and I need to be able to say that. I need to be
Yeah,
able to talk about that. And
that's a
having
great
the
point.
courage to talk about it
Yeah.
creates either awareness on their part of something maybe unconscious that they're doing, that they aren't intending to do, or it clarifies someone's level of investment and what they're capable of offering you in the relationship. So either way, which is scary because to a degree you're left with whatever result does arise.
And that's very important, to that's a very important point, because if you're free expressing yourself, then you're gonna get your partner to also express themselves easier, because they will feel
Mm.
safer when you set boundaries with your partner. They will feel safer in your company, because
Mm.
they can see that you take care of yourself, and they then
That's so
don't have.
counterintuitive, right?
Yes, but it's very, it's kind of like you take care of you got you're on, you got yourself, you are like making sure that I got somebody who is right for me. So that person
Yeah.
doesn't need to feel that they need to walk on eggshells around you, and not, because you're going to speak up for yourself, and you're
There's
going
some
to make sure that you're.
self-responsibility.
Yes.
I'm shocked. I've never thought about that. That's because I'm telling parents that all the time when it comes to
Yeah.
setting boundaries and being
Mhm.
assertive. This idea of, you know, saying, okay, this is what the parameters are, and really sticking to those when it comes to, setting a boundary with your children, saying, nope, we can't go over there, and hanging to that. It builds trust. And even if your child has a meltdown and they don't like it and they push up against it, the value is actually holding that boundary and saying, nope, because when you follow through on what you say, it builds that trust. And then they know also when you say, I love you, it's true. There's
Yeah.
no trying to coerce or manipulate, or, there's that when I say, this is the boundary, it's true. When I say I love you, it's true. But I can't believe I never thought about that when it comes to the relationships too. Ideally, I mean, you think that obviously a child having a meltdown because they didn't like that they couldn't have a popsicle for
Right.
breakfast, that initially you're going to have that pushback, which you might have in a relationship as well, in an intimate relationship. But I love that you actually bring up that value, that the importance of saying that hard thing and holding that hard boundary, because it actually sets the parameters for the other person so that they know what the expectations are. And
That
it's
and
clear, and you aren't being tricky or sneaky, or,
yeah.
they're very clear on what you need. And then they can relax into themselves and into the dynamic, knowing
Mhm.
very clearly what those lines are.
You beautifully kind of added to that, saying that they see that you're not tricky, like, oh, okay, I can relax, there is nothing. Because if they see that you're afraid, whether it's of them or something else, you're afraid to speak up, then like your anxiety causes them to kind of feel that it's kind of like transference, in therapy and
Yes.
countersensory. So it's like, ooh, what is this, So
Yes. Oh, yes, that is beautiful. And I've said that again, it's related. This idea of even codependency is it actually involves in a lot of manipulative behaviors. People think of codependence or this again. I don't always like all of these phrases because everybody has their
yeah,
own
yeah,
box of characteristics that they put these
right.
ideas into. But this idea of kind of being the martyr in the relationship, or the victim in the relationship, it again, when you set these boundaries, it allows you to take responsibility for your own health, well-being, and your own happiness and your own sense of peace, which actually takes the responsibility off them. But it also is feeding this dynamic of wanting a trusting relationship. This foundation of security is based on this trust, which is, I will take care of myself, and I will also communicate my needs openly and honestly with you. I'm not going to manipulate you or trick you into thinking that you're okay when we're not, or that, things are good when they're not, or that I'm happy when I'm not, in order to preserve attachment and connection and access to you. I'm not going to try to trick or manipulate us into staying together, because that doesn't feel good. And I think that's a perfect example of ways we could sabotage a relationship from a good place. But wow, yeah, that absolutely makes perfect sense. Well, and again, adding to that, I mean, what are other ways that you often find that these, women who are, and sometimes men, I'm sure you've worked with many men too, but I know you predominantly focus on the females in the relationship, when they are over functioning. How do you find that many of these women are accidentally sabotaging even secure relationships, and relatively healthy relationships, by over functioning and by engaging in these dynamics?
How do we sabotage relationships? So this is for everybody, but many of my, this one is for most of my audience, people with anxious attachment tendencies. They often attach too soon to the first person that they have, like this connection, they have this decent connection, they're attracted to them, and then they latch on to this first person, because, and often they're attracted to an avoidant person. And yeah, and so they also may be repelled by people who are ready possibly to love them in the ways that they need to be loved.
Why would that be? Yeah, why does that? I've seen it happen, and I've definitely been there myself. And why does that happen? Yeah, what is it about that? I think that's so important, that even if someone is secure, you might have someone who's secure and you actually either repel them or you're not able to.
Well, remember conversation about grandma, consistent reinforcement, right? Love is available. So it's not kind of, it's not so addictive. But that reinforcement schedule of intermittent reinforcement schedule of, let's say, your father that's unavailable, and like, I'm just saying as an example, but that's very often the example, who or mother can be, that's inconsistent, that becomes very addictive. And then we go into that mode of kind of trying to earn that love, and it's so addictive, so.
Oh, that's so big. So it's that idea of, I got grandma, I'm good with grandma,
right?
So
I don't need to worry about that, right?
Yeah, I don't need to invest or work hard for that love, because that's safe. But this other person, there's something about, yes, being which I think everybody can relate to a certain degree. Look at how we are with our family members, and then how we put on, our niceties with with total strangers and the neighbors, and hi, So, I mean, there's something biological about that, but you could get caught in it. You can get caught in not being aware that you're participating in this.
And then you wind up in this place of, oh my God, when it's so good, it is so good. But if you kind of think about it, it's really not so good. It's just that you are like so high from this cycle, But then when it's bad, I don't know if you remember from our class about drugs. So when you take not dopamine, when you take cocaine, right?
Cocaine, yes.
So high,
like the mouse and the lever.
Right, and then your normal is here, and then when you come down, like you're way down on the floor, right? Like, so that's what I would compare it with.
That disparity,
right. But this addictiveness, it isn't so great. I can enjoy my secure love and have joyous times on a Sunday morning. This is what security looks like. With my husband drinking coffee and doing nothing. It's kind of like having these lovely warm slippers on your feet, that's that feeling. But then we can also go for a trip and enjoy this and that, right? So nothing can compensate that sense of inner well-being together and feeling good.
That's so good. So really being aware of that basis of comparison, because you're not comparing what dad, for example, who's gone on all these trips, is offering versus what grandma is offering. Because if you really were to compare them, it's very similar. What you're basing it off of is grandma always gives me that. I almost never get this from dad. And
Yeah,
so that disparity is what
it
creates
comes.
this intensity of it being rare and special. So it must be more. And that's not necessarily an accurate portrayal of the level of goodness it provides you and fulfillment that it provides you. It's actually um, a little bit of a mind trick,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But you can
an
get off of
illusion.
that. It's yeah. Uh, I mean, I can think of now, like when I see some people that are like that kind of, those kinds of people, those kinds. So, I mean, we're all at some point those kinds of people, right?
Sure.
But
Sure.
those people that I used to be attracted to, it's like, to me right now, it's like, oh my God, I so wouldn't be interested in a person like
I
that.
love that you say that. It's not even attractive anymore because
Right,
you
right.
see it, your lens has shifted.
Yeah.
But what took practice? How did you what kind of practice helped you get to that state, to be able to shift your lens with regards to that, to be able to see it differently? Do you remember the progression of moving from that place of being head over heels to, oh,
Right. Well, there are a couple of things that, I mean, I provide to my clients so many of these things. I haven't finished these, like, things that I started talking, but I can get back to
oh,
that. But what practice,
sure.
what helped me is one of my friends told me this thing that I told you before. Like, I said, oh my God, I'm divorcing. I was over 40, and it's so funny. I went to my mom and said, hey, mom, I'm getting a divorce. And then she was like, oh my God, like, who's gonna want you now? Like I can and then it became so clear to me, like, this is her fear from her life and her whatever she wanted to do or didn't want to do, like her fears of, like, woman over 40, nobody would want you, right? And I'm like, why wouldn't somebody want me, mom, right? Like, you know so, but for her at that time, when she was in her 40s, that was seen so much differently, right? Nobody was divorcing back then in my country. But back to my friends, say, why do you worry about if they will like you? You need to go and look if you're gonna like them. And it's like such an interesting statement. I mean, sorry for everybody, I will say this: men have this better. They have
Yes.
this mindset.
Yes,
So,
they've done a lot better in this arena.
right,
Yes.
they're going out there for what they want and for what they're looking for, how they want it to be. And we're like, oh, will somebody like me? Am I a pretty enough flower that somebody will hopefully see in the bushes of different flowers, and notice me? So that kind of changed. So I decided, hey, F it, I'm over 40. I can do whatever the heck I want. I can talk to whomever I want. And, I can go after what I want. And that's
Mm,
kind of what changed for me. That moment, it's so funny that there is a moment of aha, that I don't need
for
to
you.
be worried, but I need to kind of look out for what I want.
That
So
it's
that's
switched. I
one of
am
them.
worthy. I am lovable. I do have something to offer a
Right.
relationship. And yes, and then I want to be able to find something that actually
Right.
provides and serves me in return.
And I
Yeah, so
hope
it
that
flips.
some of these conversations will give our audience at least a couple of those ahas that can help them shift these small shifts can make big difference. Asking yourself right questions can take you where you want to go,
Yes.
not pondering and analyzing and figuring it out. you know
Or playing any particular game. It's really coming
yeah,
back to yourself.
Yes.
I love that. And you said you had a few other points that
Yeah,
you were
like
thinking about.
of these self-sabotaging, as you said. So they repel. So we talked about that. So there is one, attaching too soon, repelling people that are good for you. Also a big one, especially for also anxious, but this is good thing for everybody, allowing the relationship to progress too quickly. Okay, think of
Mm,
yourself as a chariot driver. You are holding reins. Think of the person who pursues you as wild horses, 4, 5 horses that are in a chariot, and think of your relationship as a chariot. When you
mm,
allow that relationship to go too fast, you all wind up crushed somewhere in a ravine. Not so
right.
dramatic.
It's a
Yes.
delicate kind of balance of,
Well, just slow it down, just like hold it. Okay, like I need to slow down. For anxious people, they need to do it more consciously and say, I need to slow down. I need to slow down my attachment as well as the relationship, because the person that's possibly avoidant, most likely if you're anxious, they will want to kind of run quickly like those horses at the beginning, but then when you get there it's going to be like, we came here too quickly, what the hell, I don't like, I'm not ready for this. So you
mm,
need to, for everybody's safety, and I'm talking to you, I can't talk to everybody, I'm talking to you in your relationship, slow
yes.
it down, right? And for
Yeah.
avoidant people, like, um, you need to also kind of keep being aware that you have right to slow it down. You can allow that person to show to you that they are worthy of giving your heart, because there's so many people that were in abusive relationships, and that's why they become so like avoidant. It's not necessarily from
Mm,
attachment. And even women, so this is one thing that I also wanted to say. We are so much kind of hung up on this attachment that people may go and self-diagnose as, I'm like disorganized attachment. But we have all of these strategies. We have both avoidant, because think of
yes.
how many women went through abusive relationship, not maybe in my life, but maybe my mother, grandmother, or women in the past, centuries of being dependent. So we are now independent, and we are kind of latching on to that as well while we want a relationship. So that may come across as this disorganized attachment, but I think it's misdiagnosing it. I think it's kind of,
Sure.
rather generational trauma response.
And adaptive. Interesting. Yeah,
Yes.
there's an element of now trying to recalibrate. How do
Yeah.
I have an interdependent relationship without
Yeah.
being avoidant or dependent, or, that it's really finding, finding your balance in it. That's so big. That's so big. And then, and that it can push away relationships if we haven't really found that centered place
Yeah.
yet.
So you may
That's
be kind of going back and forth between both of these tendencies. So,
absolutely, absolutely. Well, and when people are engaged in dating, some really struggle, and I get this all the time in my sessions. Um, when do we call it quits? Where is that balance between saying, okay, this is beyond repair, this isn't a good fit, this is not healthy for me, um, versus hanging in there and holding on and acknowledging maybe this is a harder season, or maybe this is some of our stuff that we need to work out. How can someone really discern between their stuff and their trauma and the baggage and what they're projecting onto the relationship dynamic? Or am I being avoidant, or am I being too anxious and up against the wall, versus this isn't right for me? How
yeah,
do you help
I,
women come to that?
yeah, I don't want to tell anybody any specific, like categories of like any, things that they need to look out for. In other words, I have my what's the word? Criteria. Yeah, that's the word. I just missed a word in my head.
Yeah, like your own non-negotiables. You already have developed
Right.
your own. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have to kind of find that for yourself. And so there are three things that I want to tell you. First one is, remember, you are not going to be able to change your partner. Just take that as an axiomatic truth. You are not going to be able to change your partner. Do not count on that. Do not try that. Not that people don't change for love and for us, but if you go with that agenda, just forget that, please, because it's just going to lead both of you to misery and that's not your job. You're going to create completely different dynamic instead of this conjugal love, romantic love. You're going to wind up in some kind of therapist client, dynamic, or father daughter son dynamic, or whatever else, mentor and mentee dynamic. So don't you're going to lose elements of romantic relationship. So that said, ask yourself this question. Okay, this awakens people. This kind of makes people like, ooh, like I pull.
It's uncomfortable.
If in 5 years everything stays the same, can I be happy in this relationship? What do I need from this relationship to be happy? Now, there is a caveat. Do not ask yourself this question if you are unhappy in general with everything else in your life. If you have depression, you're going through something, you're going through some kind of transition, and you're just like so not kind of grounded. Handle those issues first, and then start discerning. It's kind of like,
that's
don't
good
go
discernment,
shopping
though.
when you're hungry, right? Don't go shopping when you are hungry.
Right.
Don't make decisions, when you are angry and stuff like that, or when
right.
You're so
yeah, like if you're grieving,
Right.
and you're having trouble in all of your relationships, or if you're in postpartum and you're right now feeling a lot of hormonal shifts and that
put
there's
it on side.
But if you're noticing in this other areas of your life, you feel really secure and stable, but there's something that isn't fitting about this relationship, then asking that question of, in 5 years, which is just far enough. It's long enough for, I think, all of us to get like that. Oh, that's a long time to put up with this bullshit. To say, if something didn't shift either about myself and about my life or about this dynamic, it would be intolerable to imagine.
But with another caveat. Don't make a mistake just like, okay, done. Like, don't be kind of like doing it. Try to make it work, not in an over-functioning sense, but express your needs, boundaries, seek some help. Maybe this person doesn't know. Maybe, because in a relationship that doesn't work, it could be us too, that I've seen, I mean, so many of my clients didn't express their boundaries, they didn't express their needs, and then when things don't work out, their partner is just kind of clueless. You are a part of this, so you need to do
really
that
good
work. Yeah.
In its own way. I mean, that's kind of what we were talking about, ways in which you can accidentally sabotage the dynamic. Is you're not even, before they even have a chance to say, oh, actually, I didn't realize that was something that mattered that much to you, or to say, oh, that's an easy change for me to make, or, oh, we could work through that, or even some compromise in between that would be a much better situation for you both. You could sabotage it by just assuming they can't do that, they won't do that, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut things off here. So to have that conversation first.
Yeah. And I mean, conversation means more than just one conversation. And you may be somebody, oh, but I told him so many times. But like, if you told somebody so many times, like, oh, you're always like this, or you're never like this, and then this person is like, why are you then with me if I'm such a horrible person, right? Like, just doesn't reach, you create this fight and flight. It doesn't reach that connection. You're just like aggravating each other's nervous system by, you're like attacking, and the person is on defense, and then they attack you too. So it's just not going to work if your communication is like that. If you think that that's communication and you said what you wanted to say.
Oh yeah, I call that drive-bys, when you're hitting them with drive-bys all the time. But yeah, I had a mentor who told me, whenever you need to have an important conversation that really is a game changer, that's like a deal breaker, major conversation, this is a big deal to you, you make an appointment. You schedule an appointment. We need to sit down. It's important to me. It gives them time to be emotionally prepared for whatever big news it is. But it also emphasizes, how important it is. And it forces them to think about it in that kind of frame of mind versus, oh, she's just in a bad mood right now. Or she's just at down my throat today about something. Yeah. That's a good distinction. That's a really, really good advice. Dalila, this has been absolutely fantastic. It is time for us to bring this to an end, but oh my gosh, I just got so much out of this episode today. Thank you so much for being on the show and sharing this invaluable wisdom. I think you just really hit the, you hit the nail on what really matters at the root of developing more self-worth and bringing the version of yourself that you want to be present to a relationship dynamic that will allow for someone else to be able to love you in that way in return, and to love who you are and accept who you are. And I mean, just techniques aside and strategies and text conversations, I mean, I think you really just nailed the root of it all, which is ultimately we find so much joy and love, and we want to keep the focus on that's what it's all about. And so beautiful. For listeners out there, you can follow Dalila on Facebook and Instagram at Independent Women Rule, and DM her directly if you'd like to work with her as well. She is currently offering a group coaching program for high achieving women who want to end this, as you put it, a situationship cycle that they continue to get themselves into, and who are ready to meet partners who will clearly demonstrate their intentions. And so they can start moving forward with that. Her ultimate goal is in this program that you never feel like you have to convince someone that you're worthy of commitment. So if you're interested, reach out to her. And oh man, I wish I had you in my life 2 decades ago. So valuable. Yeah. Oh, man. If only hindsight, right? But, even for those in relationships and in established relationships, this work is constant and it's ongoing. Yes. And these were such good reminders for me. I just have the chills to remember how I show up in my dynamics with everyone, really. But that this is at the core of it all. And especially when we want to connect these types of relationships that are really secure and healthy, that we have, you really empower women to bring themselves to the table and to feel their worth in that being already a wonderfully beautiful thing. So I'm just so grateful for you. So guys, check out her workshop, and thank you all for listening. Again, I'm Lindsay Burke, and you can follow me at Lift Therapy. Have an awesome week, you guys, and I look forward to connecting with you all again next time.
I hope that episode was helpful. Hey, listen, if you want to share your singlehood journey, if you've gone somewhere and come back, if you have revelations and wisdom, please share your story. It's going to help other people. Nothing makes us feel more connected than hearing other people's stories. So just send me the audio of your story, and you can just record it directly from your phone and email it to theangrytherapist@gmail.com. Also, if you want our Single on Purpose newsletter, go to singleonpurpose.life. That's singleonpurpose.life. You will get tools and articles and other people's stories, and also Zoom links to private gathers. So if you want to join our community, go to singleonpurpose.life. Thank you for listening. Be well. We hope you tell a friend. Hey, before you go, I want to invite you to the Single on Purpose private community online. It's off of social media. No ads, no algorithms. We got forums, we got live groups, we got webinars, and we have social hangs. We also have offline in-person hangs happening soon. So check us out. Go to singleonpurpose.life. That's singleonpurpose.life, and I will see you inside.